world has changed. China threw Iran under the bus, and Trump is winning by a landslide in Hormuz. The pressure in the Gulf has entered a new phase, and the message now is tough. This Thursday, April 16, 2026, the center of the crisis is not just the military risk, but the economic strangulation of Iran. The strongest sign of this shift appeared in the behavior of China itself. China had been buying more than 80% of the oil shipped by Iran. If this tap is shut off, the blow to Tehran is immediate. Analysts interviewed by Reuters said that the blockade could block about 2 million barrels per day that would go precisely to the Chinese market. Even in the most favorable estimates for Iran, this breathing room is limited. Without exporting, the regime needs to push oil into onshore storage, and when those stocks fill up, production starts to fall. In simple terms, without an outlet to the sea, the regime's cash flow starts to dry up, and that's exactly why China is choosing the right side. What happened was clear. The United States turned the dispute in Hormuz into an operation to cut off Iranian oil exports, isolate Tehran, and force a brutal choice between backing down or facing rapid attrition. Who is at the center of this movement? On one side, Donald Trump and the American Central Command. On the other, the Iranian regime, which tried to use the Strait of Hormuz as a lever of pressure. And in the background, China, which was seen as the main buyer and possible political shield for Tehran. Where is this happening? In the Strait of Hormuz, a vital passage between the Gulf and the Gulf of Oman, where about 20% of the world's oil passes through. How was this done? With a naval blockade, threat of interception, financial sanctions, and direct pressure on buyers and banks linked to Iranian oil. In practice, Trump changed the game by targeting not the entire global transit, but Iran's economic lifeline. The blockade announced by the United States began on April 13 and was designed to target ships entering or leaving Iranian ports without preventing navigation between non-Iranian ports. This is important because it shows the logic behind the operation. Washington wants to preserve the international route while at the same time suffocating only the machine that sustains the Iranian regime. It is targeted pressure with a broad effect. The strongest sign of this shift appeared in the behavior of China itself. Trump said he asked Xi Jinping not to send weapons to Iran and claimed he received the response that Beijing is not arming Tehran. At the same time, the United States Secretary of the Treasury stated that Washington believes there will be a pause in Chinese purchases of Iranian oil in light of the blockade and the threat of secondary sanctions. At the decisive moment, Beijing prioritized its own economic survival over saving Iran. This point carries even more weight because China had been buying more than 80% of the oil shipped by Iran. If that tap is shut off, the blow to Tehran is immediate. Without exports, the regime has to push oil into onshore storage. And when those stocks fill up, production starts to fall. In simple terms, without an outlet at sea, the regime's cash flow starts to dry up. And how does this show up in the real world? It shows up in ships pulling back, in market fear, and in the shrinking of Iran's room to maneuver. The Associated Press reported that in the first 48 hours of the blockade, 10 vessels obeyed the order to turn back. Reuters reported that ships linked to Iran have already been intercepted and that even oil-sanctioned Chinese oil showed up among the observed cases. At the same time, traffic through the Strait of Hormuz remains well below normal. In other words, Trump still hasn't restored the route to normal, but he has already managed to reverse the pressure and shift the main cost to Iran. Why didn't China go for confrontation? Because the cost is clear and steep. The Chinese economy depends on stable energy, a functioning industrial chain, and calculated risk. Data released this week shows that oil refining in China slowed down in March precisely because of supply risks in the Middle East. Beijing may even maintain tough rhetoric in public, but what really drives concrete decisions is the need to protect its industry. Getting into an escalation to defend Iran now would mean inviting an energy, financial, and commercial crisis all at once. That's why Trump is winning in Hormuz at this moment, not because everything is resolved, but because he won this crucial round. He took away Iran's advantage of using the strait as a free weapon, pushed China onto the defensive, and turned Iranian oil into a logistical, banking, and military problem. Iran still threatens, still resists, and still tries to negotiate from a position of fear, but today it is more isolated than before, and that changes the playing field. Now, the final question is simple. What comes next? Talks between the United States and Iran could still resume, but the sticking points remain the same: Iran's nuclear program, freedom of navigation in Hormuz, and the funding of armed groups in the region. But after the last few days, these negotiations have become more uneven. Iran enters under pressure, and China enters cautiously. And the United States enters with the feeling that they've found the exact spot where it hurts the most.